My name is Jacob Lee, and at 42 years old, I had it all. Or at least, that's what I told myself. I was the proud founder of InnovateX, a fast-growing tech startup based in Seattle, Washington. The company was my baby, an idea I nurtured into something groundbreaking in the field of artificial intelligence. Every day was a battle to stay ahead, to innovate faster than anyone else. But despite the success and the long hours I poured into the business, I never lost sight of my family. At home, I was the father of two incredible boys, Owen, 10 years old, and Ethan, 7. They were the light of my life, and every moment I spent with them felt like I was getting a second chance to do something right. My wife, Natalie, was 38, a brilliant editor at one of the top fashion magazines in the country. She was as driven and talented as I was, though her world was centered on the runway and glossy pages, not on algorithms and data. Despite our hectic schedules, I tried to make sure we still shared moments of connection. It wasn't always easy. There were days when I felt like I was traveling more than I was home. Business trips to cities around the world were routine, but every time I came back, I made sure to give Natalie the attention she deserved. We had been married for 11 years, a decade filled with love, challenges, and the kind of partnership that felt unbreakable. Or so I thought. This year, our anniversary was different. I wanted to make it special, really special. We'd been through so much together, and I wanted to remind Natalie of what we shared, of the bond we had since the very beginning. The first time we met in San Francisco was magical, and I decided that we would revisit that city, to relive those memories and create new ones. I even planned a surprise, a romantic dinner, a quiet walk along the bay, and a gift I knew she'd love. When I handed her the box, her eyes glinted with curiosity. I had chosen a piece of jewelry for her, something rare and beautiful, a symbol of the years we had spent building our lives together. As she unwrapped it, I could see the surprise in her eyes, followed by a soft smile. But it wasn't the kind of smile I had expected. It wasn't warm or full of affection, it was distant, almost like it was forced. "Jacob," she said, her voice steady but cold. "There's something I want to ask you." I raised an eyebrow, trying to mask the concern creeping into my mind. "Anything, Nat. You know that." Her gaze shifted, as if she was searching for the right words. Then, she took a deep breath. "I want one night. Just one night, with Brian." The words hit me like a punch in the gut. Brian? Brian? My best friend? My business partner? The guy I trusted, who had been helping build InnovateX since day one. The man who had been at every family gathering, every celebration, and every moment of my life for years. My mind raced as I tried to process what she had just said. Brian. My mind flashed back to all the times they had been together, seemingly innocent at first. They'd met at a few company events, and I always assumed they hit it off because they shared similar interests in tech and innovation. But now, in that moment, I felt like I was seeing things clearly for the first time. There had been signs, too many moments that I had brushed off, thinking they were just coincidences. I never suspected anything more. But as I looked at Natalie, something had shifted. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a weight in her eyes, a heaviness I had never seen before. "Nat, what are you talking about?" My voice felt tight, distant, almost unfamiliar. Why would you ask me that?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she just stared at me, her fingers twisting the gift I had given her. Then she sighed, her gaze lowering. "I'm sorry, Jacob. I never meant for you to find out this way. But I've spent a lot of time thinking, and I can't keep hiding it." My world seemed to come to a standstill. I didn't know what to say. The woman I had loved for more than a decade, the woman I had built my life with, was asking me for permission to spend the night with my best friend. I felt a strange, sickening mixture of anger, betrayal, and disbelief swirling inside me. I had trusted them both, too much it seemed. Too blindly. In that moment, I realized I had been blind to something far bigger than I had ever imagined. Are you serious?" My voice broke a little, and I felt like I was losing control of the situation. "I am," she said softly, her words cutting deeper than I could have ever expected. "I never meant for it to happen. But it did. And now I need you to let me do this." I couldn't breathe. I had never been more certain of anything in my life than I was right then. This wasn't the woman I married. This wasn't the life I thought we had. I felt like I was watching my entire world slip away in slow motion. But then, as the silence stretched, something else took hold of me. A need for answers. For closure. For understanding. I can't let this go on, Nat, I said, my voice firm now, even though my heart was breaking. You need to leave. Right now. The words felt like a punch to my own chest. I had never imagined it would come to this, to telling the woman I loved to leave our home, to end a marriage that had once felt so secure. But in that moment, it was the only thing I could do. Jacob, please, she started, but I couldn't hear her anymore. I turned away and left the room, my mind spinning. This wasn't the anniversary I had planned. But this was the reality I had to face. I felt like I was falling into an abyss, unsure of what to do next. But I knew one thing, this wasn't over. It was just the beginning of something I couldn't yet comprehend. I spent the rest of that night pacing in the living room, my mind running through every possible scenario, every memory, every moment that had led up to this point. The shock was still there, lingering like a thick fog, clouding my thoughts and making it difficult to focus on anything. How could this have happened? How had I not seen it? I kept asking myself those questions, but no answers came. Natalie had gone to bed after our argument, her eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't find the strength to comfort her. How could I? How could I look at her the same way after everything she had just told me? I had trusted her with my heart, my life, and now, it all felt like a lie. I couldn't sleep. I walked back to our bedroom, standing by the door for a long moment, just staring at the empty bed. I thought of the years we had spent together, how we'd built a family, a life. My mind kept going back to the first time we met, how we'd been inseparable from the moment our paths crossed in San Francisco. It seemed so long ago, like a different lifetime. Was that all just a dream? A beautiful illusion? I had no answers, only a cold, gnawing feeling in my stomach. As the night wore on, I felt something shift inside me, a mix of anger and betrayal that I could no longer ignore. I had to know the truth. I needed to know everything. When Natalie left for work the next morning, I stayed home, taking a few hours to process what had happened. I couldn't go back to work, not yet. The thought of seeing Brian's face made my stomach turn. How had I been so blind? How had I trusted him with everything, only for him to betray me in the worst way? That afternoon, as I sat alone in the house, I knew I had to take action. I picked up my phone and dialed Natalie's number. The phone rang once, twice, before she finally picked up. "Jacob," she said, her voice strained. "I didn't expect you to call." "You're not getting off that easily, Natalie," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to know the truth. Everything. How long has this been going on? How could you do this to me?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, but she didn't speak for what felt like forever. Finally, she whispered, "I'm so sorry, Jacob. I never meant for it to happen. It started innocently enough. Brian and we started talking more, and before I knew it, it became something more. I never meant to hurt you." Something inside me broke as I listened to her words. She didn't sound apologetic enough, not like she was truly sorry for what she had done. She sounded regretful for getting caught. But what about the pain I was feeling? What about the years we had spent together, the vows we made? Had those meant nothing to her? "I don't want to hear any more excuses," I said, my voice shaking with frustration. "Just tell me how long this has been going on, Natalie. How long have you been seeing him?" There was another pause before she spoke again, her voice almost a whisper. "A few months. A few months." My world seemed to tilt, and for a brief moment, I felt dizzy, like I was about to fall into an abyss. A few months. That was it. All this time, I had been working, building my company, thinking everything was fine at home. And in the background, Natalie had been living a double life. I couldn't fathom the betrayal. "Get out of my house," I said, the words escaping my mouth before I could stop them. It wasn't just anger talking, it was the realization that I couldn't continue living in this lie. I needed space. I needed to breathe. "I'm sorry, Jacob," she whispered, and then the line went dead. I sat there for a long time after we hung up, my thoughts swirling around me like a storm. I didn't know what to do next. My first instinct was to pack up and leave, to escape this place that had once been my home, the place where I had shared so many memories with Natalie and the kids. But I couldn't leave. Not yet. I had responsibilities, not just to myself but to Owen and Ethan. They were the only reason I was still holding it together. That evening, I gathered my things and took them into the study. I needed to think. I needed to find clarity. And then, I made a decision that would change everything. I grabbed my phone again, this time dialing Brian's number. The ringing felt like it took forever, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. The moment he picked up, I didn't even give him a chance to speak. "Brian," I said, my voice low and controlled though inside I was boiling. "You're going to pay for this. I trusted you. I gave you everything, and you stabbed me in the back." There was a moment of silence before Brian spoke. His voice was shaky, as if he was already anticipating the confrontation. "Jacob, I never meant for this to happen. I never thought it would come to this." "Well, it has," I snapped. "I don't care what your excuses are. You've ruined everything. You've destroyed everything I've worked for." I could hear Brian trying to justify himself, but I couldn't listen anymore. The rage inside me was building, and it felt like I was about to lose control. "I'm cutting ties with you, Brian," I said firmly, my voice cold. "I want you out of my life. And if you have any sense left, you'll stay away from my family. You've already caused enough damage." I ended the call without waiting for a response. As I set my phone down, the weight of the decision settled on my shoulders. It wasn't just about business anymore. This wasn't just about Innovate X or the deals I had made with him. It was about trust, betrayal, and what was left of my family. I had to move on. But how? And at what cost? The days that followed felt like a blur, each one blending into the next with a strange, suffocating weight pressing down on me. My mind wouldn't stop racing. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Natalie's face, her cold smile as she made her request. Brian's voice, shaky and full of guilt, echoed in my ears. I couldn't escape it. The betrayal was everywhere, creeping into my every thought, turning my world upside down. It was hard to focus on anything. I couldn't concentrate on work. Innovate X needed me, but I couldn't give it the attention it required. I was too consumed with the destruction of my personal life. My team reached out, wondering where I was, why I hadn't responded to emails, but it felt like I was living in a different reality. I just needed to breathe. I kept busy with the kids, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy. Owen and Ethan were so full of life, so innocent. They had no idea what was happening, and I wasn't sure how to explain it to them. What could I say? How could I explain their mother's actions without causing them irreparable damage? They were still young, still trusting, and I couldn't bear to break that trust too soon. But even as I tried to shield them, the weight of my new reality hung over me like a dark cloud. I knew that things couldn't stay like this forever. The first real conversation I had with Natalie after that night was a few days later. She had been avoiding me, and I had been avoiding her as well. But the silence was unbearable, and the truth was that we couldn't avoid this forever. I still had questions I needed answered, not for the sake of reconciliation, but because I needed closure. I picked up the phone and dialed her number. It rang for a while before she picked up. "Jacob," she said softly. "I didn't think you'd want to talk to me." Her voice was distant, tinged with regret, but it wasn't the apology I needed to hear. She wasn't truly sorry, not in the way I needed her to be. "I need you to tell me everything, Nat," I said, my voice firm despite the tightness in my chest. "I need the truth. No more excuses." There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing on the other end, and I waited, my patience wearing thin. Finally, she spoke, her voice small and fragile. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I didn't plan for it. Brian and we became close, and I started to feel something I hadn't felt in years. You were always away, and I felt so alone, Jacob." Her words hit me like a slap. I could hear the self-pity in her voice, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sympathy. How could she justify what she'd done? How could she explain it away so easily? "I was lonely," she repeated, as if that was supposed to make everything make sense. "I didn't want to hurt you. I never wanted this to happen. But it did." I clenched my fists, trying to hold onto my composure. "So it was just a mistake? A temporary lapse in judgment?" "It wasn't just a mistake, Jacob," she said, almost pleading. "It was more than that. But I don't want to hurt you anymore. I want to fix this. I want us to figure this out." I felt my throat tighten. It wasn't enough. The apology wasn't enough. The truth wasn't enough. How could she think that I could just forgive her? That we could just pick up where we left off? My trust in her was shattered, and it was hard to imagine ever piecing it back together. I can't do this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I can't keep living like this. You need to leave, Nat. I can't be in this house with you anymore. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I could feel her pain, but at that moment, it wasn't enough to change my mind. I had been hurt too deeply, too suddenly, and it was impossible to move past it. Okay, she said softly, her voice breaking. I'll leave. But I'm so sorry, Jacob. I truly am. Her words hung in the air like an unfinished sentence. She was sorry, but it was too late. The damage had been done. In the days that followed, I began the process of separation. The legal paperwork, the custody arrangements, it all felt so cold, so clinical. But I knew it was necessary. I had to protect myself, and I had to protect my kids. The thought of them being caught in the middle of this mess broke my heart. But I couldn't let it continue. The hardest part, though, was seeing Brian's name in the headlines. The news of the affair spread quickly, and soon I had people from all directions, investors, business partners, even colleagues, asking me what had happened. How could I let this happen? How could I have been so blind? Brian's reputation took a hit. His name became synonymous with betrayal, and his professional ties crumbled. Investors who had been backing InnovateX began pulling out, refusing to work with someone who had allowed such a scandal to fester in their personal life. It was as if the business was being dragged down with my personal pain. I knew I couldn't allow that to happen. I threw myself back into work, harder than ever before. It was the only thing that kept me from falling apart completely. I couldn't control what had happened with Natalie or Brian, but I could control InnovateX. I had to keep moving forward, for the sake of my company, for my kids, and for my sanity. Every day, I tried to remind myself that the future was still mine to shape. But no matter how hard I worked, no matter how many hours I put in, the truth was clear. I had lost something, someone irreplaceable. And that loss would haunt me forever. It's strange how quickly everything can fall apart. One moment, you're living your life, making plans for the future, thinking that the people closest to you are exactly who you believe them to be. And the next, everything you thought you knew gets torn down in an instant. The house feels too quiet without Natalie. The days blur together as I work, trying to push the pain aside, pretending like I can handle it. But every night, when I lie awake in bed alone, the weight of the truth settles over me again, suffocating me. In the months that followed, I did what I had to do to move forward. The divorce was finalized quickly. Natalie and I agreed on shared custody of the kids, though I had full physical custody. It was the hardest decision I ever made, but it was the right one for them. I could see it in their eyes. They needed stability. And that stability was something I was determined to give them, no matter the cost. But even as I focused on the kids, my business was unraveling. InnovateX had been shaken to its core by the scandal. The media buzzed about the affair, and it wasn't long before investors started pulling out. Business deals I had worked tirelessly for began slipping through my fingers. And all the while Brian, who had once been a close friend, a trusted partner, faded from the picture. He tried to apologize, tried to offer explanations, but it was too late. The damage had already been done, and no amount of regret could fix what he had taken from me. The one silver lining, if I could even call it that, was the support I got from my team. They were still loyal, still believed in the work we were doing. Together, we restructured the company, focusing on innovation, the core of what had made InnovateX successful in the first place. Slowly but surely, we began to regain momentum. It wasn't easy, and it certainly wasn't the same. The weight of betrayal still hung over every deal, every decision. But I refused to let the company die. I poured myself into the work, long hours, late nights, and constant meetings. Anything to distract myself from the emptiness. My personal life was in shambles, but the business had to survive. For Owen, for Ethan, and for me. As the weeks went on, I noticed the subtle changes in myself. The anger had begun to fade, replaced by a quiet resignation. I had accepted that I couldn't change what had happened. I couldn't go back to the way things were with Natalie, and I couldn't undo the hurt she had caused. But I could control how I moved forward. I could control how I raised my children, how I rebuilt my company, and how I learned to trust again. Even if that meant trusting myself. Owen and Ethan had adapted surprisingly well to the changes. They were young, but I could see the effects of the divorce in their behavior. There were days when they would ask questions about where Mom was or why she wasn't home, and I would answer as honestly as I could without burdening them with too much information. I never wanted them to think that their mother had abandoned them. That wasn't the case. She had made her choices, and they had consequences, but that didn't mean I had to poison their perception of her. She was still their mother, and they deserved to love her, even if I couldn't. It was a delicate balance, one that I wasn't sure I could maintain forever. But for now, it was enough. And then there was the matter of Brian. As much as I tried to distance myself from the pain he had caused, it was hard to avoid the inevitable encounters. There were events, meetings, industry gatherings where we would be in the same room, and the tension would be palpable. Brian had been blacklisted from much of the business community after the affair became public knowledge, but the consequences of his actions still affected me, and I couldn't escape that reality. One afternoon, I found myself face to face with him in a small conference room, of all places. It was awkward. He had come to apologize, but I couldn't bring myself to listen. How could I? The damage was too deep. He had been my friend, my partner, and now, he was a stranger to me. A stranger who had taken something I could never get back. Jacob, he said, his voice low and filled with remorse. I've tried to reach out to you, but I know I've done something unforgivable. I've ruined everything. I didn't respond immediately. I didn't know what to say. The truth was, I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to tell him how much he had destroyed, how much he had cost me, not just professionally, but personally. But instead, I remained silent, letting the words hang in the air between us. I'm sorry, man, he continued, his eyes sincere but empty. I didn't think it would go this far. I never meant for this to happen. I felt a tightness in my chest. The anger that had been simmering beneath the surface flared up again, but I kept it in check. I knew that no matter what I said, it wouldn't change anything. His apology wasn't enough. It could never be enough. You should have thought about that before you did it, I said, my voice steady but filled with coldness. But you didn't, did you? Brian hung his head, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I wish I could take it all back, Jacob. I wish I could make things right. You can't, I replied simply, the finality of my words hanging in the air. And that was the end of it. No more words. No more explanations. The friendship I had once cherished, the trust one had once believed in, was gone, irreparably broken. I turned and walked away from him, the weight of the past pressing heavily on my back. As I left the conference room, I felt something inside me shift again. The rage that had once consumed me was no longer there. It was replaced by something else, something quieter, deeper. A sense of finality. The chapter of my life that had been consumed by betrayal, heartbreak, and loss was closed. Now, I could only move forward. And so, I did. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, and I knew that. But for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope, a faint sense of possibility. I didn't know exactly what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure, I would rebuild. And this time, I would do it for me. For my kids. And for the future I still had to create.